Scientists are certain the building collapsed because of fires that started when Tower 1 fell. These fires were mainly on floors 6 through to 13, except floor 10. And there were fires initially on some of the upper floors. The collapse of the Twin Towers also severed the mains water supply, preventing firefighters tackling the fires and, crucially, stopping the sprinkler system working.
There's no way to put the fire out. Well, we got all kinds of water problems. The two trade buildings took out the mains. You know, we can handle just about everything. This is beyond.
To explain Tower 7's collapse, it's vital to understand what was going on inside the building in the 7 hours before it fell. Investigators focused on the east side, where the long floor spans were under most stress. Here, fires burnt long enough to weaken and break many of the connections that held the steel structure together. Most susceptible were the thinner floor beams, which required less fireproofing, and the connections between the beams and the columns. As they heated up, the connections failed, and the beams also buckled.
Our analysis showed that it was the fires that, when it reached the northeast corner, that really was the reason why this building collapsed.
Unique to Building 7's collapse was thermal expansion. The steel beams heated up quicker than the concrete floors. As they expanded, the beams buckled, causing many floors and connections to fail.
The weakening of those floors eventually led to the failure of a girder on floor 13, which caused the floors to start collapsing one on top of the other. And suddenly you had a single column that was unsupported over a 9-story length, and that buckled. That initiated the collapse.
For those self-styled truthers who think 9/11 was an inside job by the US government, no official report is going to convince them otherwise. For the 7th anniversary, many of them gathered at an event in New York called Now or Never. Richard Gage flew in from California to speak to them. He was scathing about the official report.
Let's get this started off with some evidence. What do you say? It can't tear, it can't bend, it can't crush. That means it's falling at free fall speed. It can't do any other work. Those columns...
This is a fundamental point for the critics. They say Building 7 falls at free fall speed. Nothing in its huge steel structure slows its collapse. They argue it looks and acts like a controlled demolition.
There is no resistance. The building would have slowed down in order for it to crush these columns. It didn't, meaning the columns had to have been removed. I have two 15-story buildings that I'm going to drop. Simple experiments don't lie. When I show this experiment to people, they get it intuitively. Ready, 1, 2, 3. Oh my God, the one that had no resistance under it falls at free fall speed. What happens over here, the one that has 80,000 tons of structural steel on it? It doesn't even give.
But investigators say columns hadn't been removed. They'd been weakened by fires. And what's more, the building did not collapse at free fall speed. The scientists timed the fall of the top 17 floors before they disappeared from view. It took 5.4 seconds. A free fall collapse would have taken 3.9 seconds.
Clearly, the time that this building took to collapse was longer by almost 40 to 50% than the free fall time of an object. Well, 40% is a lot longer than, it's not 5%, it's 40%. It's huge.
Live free or die!
Call for quiet on the set.
Good evening, and welcome to Hardfire. I'm Ronald Wick. Tonight,
a community TV station in New York hosts a regular program aimed at debunking conspiracy theories.
We're here at historic St. Paul's Chapel on Broadway. This is where the truthers are flocking. So we're going to...
For the 7th anniversary of 9/11, they're filming the show at Ground Zero.
I'm looking for someone 7 years after the fact to tell me what happened 7 years ago. Give me some kind of coherent narrative.
Coherent narrative? Well, basically, there's evidence that shows that 9/11 was an inside job. happens if China came here and started building permanent bases here in the United States?
We hear all sorts of scattershot criticisms, and we hear outlandish theories that are internally inconsistent. Why would the government attack its own citizens? Make sense of this to me. If you allege a conspiracy, then someone benefits. Show me who and how.
I don't really know what happened. I have no idea what happened, and I don't think anybody in this movement really knows what happened. If there is a grand conspiracy, and if there is something much larger behind the scenes than we've been told, it would probably be a little presumptuous of us to at least try to form some kind of cohesive story from start to finish. I mean, it would be kind of setting ourselves up. You know what I'm saying?
You do know that NIST just released its final report on the collapse of World Trade Center.
The computer simulation is based on...
These are beliefs. This is a faith. This is not a worldview that's based on reality.
The chief counter-terrorism advisor to President Bush on 9/11 was Richard Clarke, and he was with Vice President Dick Cheney in the White House that morning.
People who believe in conspiracy theories, and particularly this one about WTC-7, don't understand government and clearly have never worked in government. Anyone who's ever worked in government will tell you two things: that the government doesn't have the competence to do a large-scale conspiracy like this, and number two, it can't maintain secrecy. There's almost nothing that I know of in 30 years of having top-secret clearances that hasn't come out in the Washington Post and the New York Times.
There can be no whitewash at the White House.
So there's no way this conspiracy of knocking down WTC-7 could have happened.
But he's got 30 years of experience.
I don't care what kind of fucking experience he has, man. I don't care. He's a person in the system. Of course he's going to tell you those kinds of things. You honestly think Richard Clarke is going to come out and say, oh yeah, of course the government was part of it. Oh yeah, of course there's a cover-up. No, he's going to fucking toe the party line and defend the government. He's going to defend his ex-bosses. Come on, man.
The former chief counter-terrorism advisor does not think there's anything mysterious about Tower 7.
I was in the World Trade Center 7 on a number of occasions. This was an office building in downtown New York. I mean, the fact that there were some government agencies in there is certainly true, but there are lots of other people in there too, and you could have rented an office or floor, anybody could have.
Skeptics reject the official report and also question the integrity of the scientists who worked on it.
I don't know how to judge the good faith of the individuals at NIST, but if I were them, I wouldn't be sleeping well at night.
It's surprising that there is a community of people who don't accept what's solid and science conducted by people with impeccable technical expertise.
If you want to know who did it, start researching secret societies.
We really have not seen any coherent theory that really stands up to technical scrutiny.
This is part of an ongoing cover-up. The evidence exists. They're not letting it out.
Don't be afraid.
I guess everyone's entitled to their opinion. It kind of angers me because I was there. I've heard people talk about it that come from Cincinnati and California and wherever else they come from. I was here, you weren't. I think they have no respect for all the friends of mine that I lost and all the people that died that day. It's like a slap in their face.
Nearly 3,000 people died on 9/11, including 343 New York firefighters. The man who was in charge that day hopes now, with the release of the official report on Tower 7, a painful chapter in America's history will end.
Conspiracies can always be more exciting than the real thing because you can always add to them. It makes for great fiction. And I enjoy great fiction myself, but when it comes to real life, I think we have to know one side of the page is real life, one side of the page is fiction, and draw the line between them and live in the real world and enjoy our fiction as fiction.